You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 70, Improving Your Dungeons. Today we talk about improving your dungeons. We discuss how to make dungeons feel more alive and how to add more story around the purpose of your dungeon. We also discuss some pitfalls in our mind about the average dungeon design. We'd like to also shout out Gary, who sent us an email on this subject after it was recorded. We'll dive deeper into your thoughts in a future episode. Also, on June 2nd, there will not be a new episode of this podcast as we'll be taking the week off. There are plenty of new episodes in the hopper, so stay tuned. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, he's more than a couple of pitfall traps, Jared.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not bad. Pretty boring week.
Pretty boring week?
Yeah. It's kind of nice.
Things have been changing a little bit for me. I might be getting a promotion, which would be good.
That's fantastic. You deserve one.
Thank you. I've been looking for. They've been talking about it like that it was going to happen in correlation with our fiscal year ending, which happens in June, July. But some things have happened around the company that have accelerated that. A position has come open. So
Your fiscal quarters are in June, July.
I know it's weird.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
It's not April.
Not April. It fiscal year ends at the end of May, I believe, and starts in June.
Weird. Oh no, there is a fiscal year in June. July 1st is a fiscal quarter. Yeah, it goes.
Oh, then that's probably when it starts.
January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, October 1st. Fiscal quarters.
So we line up with that.
Jared, how the fuck do you know that off the top of your head? Because we're molding everything to be in fiscal quarters now after not doing that for years, and everyone is losing their mind, except I'm like, guys, it's 4 fucking dates. That's all you got to remember.
It's 4 dates. They're all 3 months apart.
All 3 months. If the first one's in January, which is 1, and you add 3... You got the next
4.
fiscal quarter. People are losing their minds in the company.
How does one math?
Like the shit part is we do operate with government contracts. So they're state governments mostly. And then we have one on a federal contract. And the shit part is that not every state falls in the same fiscal years. Like they don't have it like January to November. Like we have one contract that their fiscal year starts July. Like that's quarter 1 for the next fiscal year is July 1st. And it's like that's 2023 fiscal year, and they're like, yes. Why did you guys make this decision? But I mean, it's states. So I mean, states go back a long, long time, and not all of them were here when fiscal started. And but either way, what is our topic for today?
Our topic for today spawned out of improving your mass combat, and that is improving your dungeons. Because we talked about dungeons, I believe, in that. And when we talked about the harpies and why they're sitting in your frickin' dungeon.
Yes.
And so we wanted to talk about improving your dungeons, which is a little bit of a departure for us because we don't really do dungeons, but we do know how to set up scenes with people in them and give them purpose to being where they belong.
Well, here's the thing. You know, the theories and practices of role-playing still equate to dungeons. Yes, I don't do dungeons. Why? Because I don't do Dungeons and Dragons. I typically don't do historical games. Ironically, that I am, have my degree in history, but my degree in history is in modern history, specifically around, the modern war on terror. It is not so much on the ancient times. I'm starting to get into some of the ye old times. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so typically I don't. However, I have cave systems. I have sewers. things of death that are very much akin.
We have things that are like dungeons.
Very much like dungeons. And dungeons can take so the key point or key starting point for this entire conversation is realizing that a dungeon does not necessitate meaning an underground cavern that is literally designed for the imprisonment and torture of people. That's typically what when you define dungeon, it doesn't even have to be underground. It is simply a place to imprison and, sometimes execute and interrogate prisoners. That's what a dungeon is. And, me, like when I look at D&D and I'm like, I hear the word dungeon crawl, you can see my skin crawl. I'm like, literally, you are having them explore a dungeon. And some people look at me like, yeah. I'm like, could you not come up with a better storyline? Like, did you have some serious case of writer's block? Were you in the hospital? What? No, this is what we always do. Really? I'm not a dungeon crawl guy. And in point of fact, like, as I just said, the word dungeon crawl makes my skin crawl. Because I have a very linear view on this now, because I tend to only think of like, oh, well, you guys start off in a dungeon and you just work your way through, essentially turning a role-playing game almost into a board game, which is how Dungeons & Dragons started off. It started as a war game, and, blossomed into this beautiful role-playing game. Now, the thing with dungeons, if you are doing dungeon crawls or any sort of type of... So when I look at a dungeon now in terms of role-playing, what you are talking about is an enclosed area of which there's finite pathways to get to an end location. Okay? It is the antithesis of a sandbox game, whereas here's the whole world, go as you wish. I'm literally bringing you into an enclosed area. So dungeon could mean a mine shaft. A dungeon could mean a cave system. That is a dungeon in the purposes of role-playing. It is not the literary term. It's a figurative term, I guess, in role-playing. Because I've heard people are like, yeah, we went through the dungeon crawl of, the caves of Ethermore. That's not a dungeon. No, it is. No, that's a cave. And that's where I got fucked up. That's where I got all turned around. I'm like, no. Where's the prison? There is no prison in the caves. Then it's not a freaking dungeon. But it is. For the purpose of role-playing, it is a dungeon. So in that regard, I have done numerous dungeons. Because I've trapped my players in cave systems before. Aaron just did it in like 2 games ago. He put us through a cave system, several cave systems.
Yeah.
All of them dungeons. The other thing that kind of creates a difference between a cave system and a dungeon is typically traps. Caves, dungeons, in a role-playing definition, almost always have traps. When I have a cave system, there isn't necessarily a trap, but a dungeon typically has them. So here's my thing. When you are starting off, when building a dungeon, you say, I want it, my players love dungeon crawls. I want to give them dungeon crawls. I just want to give them better dungeon crawls. Okay, that's something that's doable. That's something we can work with there. So the first part is, what is the end goal? Is there a dragon to slay? Is there treasure to find? What is going on in this dungeon? What's the ultimate goal? Why are we sending a group of brave warriors and, one cowardly mage going into this lethal situation? Is it the promise of there's gold down there? There is the sword of turmeric down there. think that's also Tumerica's spice.
But you said it, I'm like, it's a yellow sword that.
Don't hate on the spice.
I like turmeric.
The spice is life. Isn't that from Dune?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, either way, tell us in the comments. Tell us if that's from Dune or if I'm way off, or if I just made up a quote. The spice is life. So, what is my ultimate goal? So, I want my players to get down there to receive the sword of. I'm gonna stick with turmeric. I don't care.
Okay.
Blow me.
All right, quite aggressive, but thank you.
That was a little aggressive. I apologize. So the sword of turmeric, so then they can slay the Lich King. It's always the Lich King. Why not? I like liches.
Actually, on a side note from this here, if you're going to go into a dungeon, like undead makes sense to be in a dungeon because, just like Jared brought up with the harpies thing, why are these harpies in this dungeon?
Well, we're gonna get into that because I could rant for 45 minutes on why stupid shit is in dungeons. Like, personally, like my personal favorite is there's a dragon at the end of the dungeon, and the dragon's been terrorizing the whole town, and we've hired the adventurers to go into the dungeon to kill the dragon. Was it this fucking dragon who set up all these goddamn traps? Is he out there like with small tools so he can work the levers and the pulleys so he can sleep in peace?
He's got the back door, Jared.
Well, did he find, is there a real estate agency that's got like, need to sleep peacefully at night? I've got a 9th level dungeon that will murk most people who come down here. Definitely taking it. Oh, it's also cursed, so anyone who's killed does become an undead. Bitch, does it come with a view? That's all I need to know. I'm taking it. Let's start off with improving your dungeon rather than me ripping on dungeons for 45 minutes. So what's our main goal? So once we've established the goal, I just want my players to kill a dragon. I want my players to, have an aggressive fight. Remember our theme and mood. Go back to theme and mood. What's the objective? Remember, every scene is supposed to have an objective. So I really want them to have a knockdown, drag out, almost survival horror, but not survival horror. I guess survival adventure through a dungeon where they walk out going, "Oh my God, I walked in here with all of my gear and I walked out with nothing. We ate all the food. We drank all of our water. We had one torch between all of us at the end because we all started off using our torches like idiots." Yeah, I don't understand that when like, everyone in the group, like, I take out my torch. I've been there. I've been in that group where literally everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I take out my torch too." Okay, I take out my torch too. And like the storyteller, storyteller looked at me and was like, "Are you taking out your torch?" And I'm like, "No, we got light from like 1,000 freaking candles. I'm good. I'm good. I see their torches. I'm good." And then I was, told I was being cheap. I'm like, I'm saving my torches for when we run out. And then the storyteller informed me, like, I don't do durations for torches. They just last. I was like, why is this so important that I take out my torch? And it turned out, like, obviously he had a monster down there that used heat to see us, and I thus became invisible.
Well, again, beating the GM's storyline by using logic.
I just didn't want to take I'm a Boy Scout. I'm a freaking Eagle Scout. Like, save supplies. I've studied survival situations beyond being a Boy Scout. I'm one hair's breadth away from trying to become a prepper, okay? I just look at it and go, it's too expensive. There's my cheapness coming in. I'm not spending money on that much. But what if I need it for an emergency situation? I don't know. But let's get back to the dungeon. So I've got my goal. I want them to slay a dragon. I want it to be almost survival adventure. I want them to run them out of their supplies. So I know that I need this cavern to be extraordinarily long, that will take them several sessions to get through. So to get to the dragon at the end. so they should be almost out of equipment. I should expire them, or expire all their equipment as they go, all their consumables, until they get to the end where pretty much they're almost, they've eaten their shirts and they're so hungry fighting this dragon. So now that I've established my goal, I've established my mood, my theme, then I can actually start building out the dungeon. So then I can look at it and go, okay, one, this is kind of backwards design methodology. How do they know about the dragon? The townspeople told them. Okay, so why do the townspeople tell them about the dragon? Because the dragon's been eating sheep. Okay, there we go. So we know this dragon comes out during the day, eats sheep, goes back to his lair. Okay, now I've got to start problem solving some of these things. Because my heroes, trust me, Brian and Aaron, if they love anything, it is a good stakeout. They will be like, it's a stakeout. They look at stakeouts like fucking slumber parties. Like, it's the best thing for them. They love stakeouts.
We'd get a wagon, we'd put it somewhere, we'd stake it out.
We'd stake it out. They'd be out there with their like little camp stove and like got their, if it's back in
There goes the dragon.
There goes the dragon. Okay, he left the place, so we're going to wait for him to come back, and then we're going to ambush him. That's what my two lovely players would do. They would set what's called a hasty ambush. Because they're like, we're going to be waiting for you when you fucking come back. I'm not going in that cave. But let's say my players like dungeons, and they prefer that type. So I've got to make sure that the dragon, the townsfolk know one entrance, but they don't know the back door that the dragon's using that Aaron mentioned earlier. Don't know that one. We don't know how he gets in and out. All we know is that he is in that cave. How do we know? Well, we find the bones of our dead freaking sheep. That's where he chucks his garbage, like out the front door.
Got a magical garbage chute. Okay.
I don't know, but you know what I mean. You got to make sure that your treasure or your objective is not readily accessible by other means if you're going to welcome them holistically into the dungeon. Okay? Because my players will sit out there and wait. KYP, know your players. They will sit there. If you're like, damn, my players are going to sit there and they're going to ambush his ass. Better make his ass unambushable. He's got a second entrance. We don't know how he gets in, how he gets out. We just know that he's in that cave.
He comes from the mountain.
Comes from the mountain, and there's only one cave in that freaking mountain. Dead Man's Cave. Because we sent a bunch of farmers up there to go kill the dragon. They never came back. So we know the dragon's there. Okay. So now we've proofed our players from being able to access it through a different means. If your players, however, just remember our stonewalling episode, if they find the back way, if they are determined not to go through your dungeon, and they're like, fuck no, he's got to be getting out a different way because we've staked him out for 4 fucking days. How is he still getting out? And they're like, we're going to go around the mountain. We're going to take a slow pass. We're going to check, for enemy positions. We're going to use our stone of heat sensing. If they are intent on defeating this situation a different way, do not freaking stonewall them. This is what we talked about. This is the advantage of role-playing over video games. I don't have to go through your creepy freaking front door. I can wait for you at the back door. I find your little freaking exit, and then I'm going to sit here and wait for him. Now, there's some ways that you can do to even more improve or proof it. I don't know, the cave entrance exit or the secondary exit that the dragon leads through is underwater. He literally flies through the water and flies out of the water.
Unless it's in a volcano. I mean, like, there's all sorts of things you can do.
All sorts of shit you can do. But just be ready. Do not stonewall your players into, I've laid out this dungeon. I've spent hundreds of hours prepping it. I've got every trap. I've got the music played. I've got all this. If your players outsmart you, do not fuck them over. Do not take that from them.
I think we mentioned in one of our first episodes, if your players are like, we don't know how to pick these locks, we don't know how to solve these puzzles, and your warrior goes and sells his golden breastplate to hire a bunch of dwarves to mine the way through the dungeon, okay? Like,
yeah.
Give it to them. I mean, tell them it takes a long time. There's a bunch of dead sheep, maybe a bunch of dead villagers. Okay, impress upon them that maybe it's more important.
Consigliere moment.
Yeah, maybe this thing that's probably going to take 2 or 3 weeks to do is not the most efficient way to get to the dragon.
I'm just saying the dwarves are fast. They ain't that fast.
Okay. 2 or 3 weeks, Steve. 2 or 3 weeks.
Are you sure? Because they look at you and they're like, well, we haven't really checked out the stone. Give them that moment. But at the same time, if your players are determined not to walk through that creepy forest and they are determined to go around it, do not force them into the creepy forest, because it is your players communicating to you, we don't want that. We're not looking for that right now. We're not looking to be creeped out. That's why we're walking around the forest. That's why we're taking the easy path. That's why we're like, you know what? I don't want to be in that dungeon. I don't. Nope. So that's why we are going to go to the other side of the mountain. We're going to set up an OP, which is an observation post. We're going to find out how this dragon freaking leaves the cave system. We're going to locate that secret entrance that he thinks is so secret, and we're going to ambush him when he comes back after eating sheep.
Now, more than likely, your players are going to just go through the dungeon.
They're going to go through the dungeon.
Okay? I'm going to say 99% of player groups are going to go through the dungeon. 1% of player groups are probably going to try to find this other entrance and figure it out and do that. If you've already impressed upon them that the villagers know the dragon's coming from this place, it's got to be the mouth here. We sent people in. They died. People, that's the way into the dungeon. Okay? Now, again, you might have players who stake it out and go, there's got to be another way into this dungeon. Okay? But most players aren't going to do that. Most players are going to be like, okay, let's gear up. You got the axe. You got the rod. You got the staff. All right, we got Dragon's Bane. Let's go.
Dragon's Bane. You make fun of my sword of turmeric? You're the one with Dragon's Bane. The troll garlic. Sorry, in one of our games, we do have troll garlic. It's great, goes great on tacos.
It's great on tacos.
So, carrying on. So now that we've established that we've kind of started building our dungeon, if you have a cave system, it's how was the cave system formed? That is a big important thing. It helps for me design it. Most people don't lay traps. Where are the traps? Why are there traps? Why? And this is where we're going to go into my favorite part. Why is everything there? So
the best thing. Sorry, I'm going to just jump in this. The best thing that you could do if you're going to do a cave system, you want traps, have a bunch of rock slides. Okay, that makes sense.
It does.
At least there's cave-ins. It makes sense. It's harder to trip them. It's harder to say that they're purposely you're trying to work your way around them. But that's probably the best trap that you have. Again, Jared's bring up the point. Why is X here? Okay, insert whatever you want for X. Why are the harpies here? Why is the dragon here?
Why is everything here?
Why is there a trap? Why is there a pitfall? Why is there?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everything must have purpose. Okay? Nobody sat around and going, you know what? There's a dragon in the mountain who's eating all the villagers' sheep. Kind of don't want that dragon to die because the price of sheep have skyrocketed. So I'm going to go build some traps in the alternate exit just to make sure he doesn't get killed in the middle of the night. Highly unlikely story, but at least it has purpose. And then you have the story of the shady sheep dealer who's trying to keep the price of sheep up. That's kind of an interesting story. I'm just saying, it's different. When one of your players ever been like, holy shit, you did this to keep the price of sheep up in the region? Yeah. You greedy bastard.
I would have gotten away with it too. Wasn't for your
meddling adventures. It happens. But even that has purpose. Now, if you were going for treasure and stuff like that, here's one of the things that I despise in dungeons. Okay, I despise it. Okay, here we go. I'm emotionally preparing myself for this. Okay. They say there's the sword of turmeric in this dungeon. And then the storyteller alerts me that this dungeon was created to protect the sword of turmeric, so it could be used against the Lich King in 1,000 years. And they made all these traps so it couldn't be stolen. how did the people who built this fucking temple intend to get the sword when they needed it? Oh, we were going to go in and send in the 10 best warriors to go die at the hands of the traps we fucking made? Are you crazy?
Did we forget about all the traps? No, we wanted to give you the schematics and be like, you need to retrieve the sword. Here's all the traps.
Here's all the traps. We didn't actually think of a way to get in. We booby trapped it on the way.
Dave built the temple, okay, and
he went crazy and ate all the maps.
He also trapped the sword inside. We've been trying to get
We've
it
been
out.
trying. You know, we sent in 10 groups of adventurers. Also, Dave did put in the curse that the undead, anyone who dies in there turns into an undead guardian. I mean, that seems to be a standard dungeon curse. I mean, it literally should be a level 1 fucking warlock spell. It's so fucking common. I'm just saying, like, warlock should be able to do that. Like, welcome to Hogwarts. Your first day is the curse of the undead guardian. Okay? It's Wizardry 101. Because everyone uses it. The undead are always in freaking cave systems or in a dungeon.
But again, there's things that you can do. If you want to put treasure at the end of the dungeon, you can have, you know, it be like the modern day pyramid, the pyramids and stuff, like where like they had all those traps and stuff built.
They did, but
to keep grave robbers from stealing shit.
But notice the back history, and that's where it comes in. The back history. These kings believed that all this stuff would come with them to the afterlife. If they had it buried with them, they would have access to it in the afterlife. Hence, I don't want anybody getting it, and I have use of it here. For most dungeon crafters, right, they create these elaborate dungeons that have no use. I put my treasure back there, right? I'm a king. I put it behind 90 freaking layers, a couple of harpies, 2 dragons, and a partridge in a pear tree. How do I make a deposit or a withdrawal? Got a plan for that, Chief? And it is something that's very difficult to do, okay? What is ever put behind your booby traps, and if there's only
Again,
one
remember
way
the
in,
title of this episode. It's improving your dungeon.
Yeah.
It's not just how to make dungeons.
Yeah, it isn't. It's how to improve your dungeons. It's because if your players don't care, right, you can still give them this. Give them something. Why can't they make a deposit? Why can't they make a withdrawal? You can think these things out so your dungeons become something better. Because anyone can say there's a treasure in a dungeon and you got to go get it. Anybody can do that. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, were you sick for a week? Could you just mad writer's block? What? And so why are we going into the dungeon? We've established why is the dungeon there is a huge thing. Why were there booby traps put in place?
What always drives me nuts, or what sort of confounds me, and this goes along to your point, is why does the treasure have to exist at the end of the dungeon? I know that's sort of like the trope. That's how it kind of works. And again, if you go back to the simplicity of it, you know, you go through the dungeon, you get treasure at the end of the dungeon. Wouldn't it make more sense where you go through the dungeon and you come out on the other end and somebody rewards you for your effort?
Yeah.
That would be more plausible. It's effectively you getting treasure for hitting the end of the dungeon, but it makes more narrative sense.
It does. And here's my thing always in the end with the dungeon. It makes more narrative sense that they're rewarded. And it makes zero narrative sense even if it's a villain's vault. Because some people will be like, well, villains put traps. Again, our Lich King, let's say you put a 100-foot pitfall trap that, you know, is 100 feet long, so nobody can jump it. There's only one way to do it, which is climb the wall rocks on the side, right? Is the Lich, does he have the capability to fly over that? Whatever is going to use your dungeon has to have the ability to evade all of the traps. This is going to improve your dungeon substantially. Okay? Knowing that the dungeon has a way to evade all of the traps that the players don't know, that the townsfolk don't know.
But again, it exists. It means that, again, you're not stonewalling your players. If they for somehow figure out how to evade the traps, they figure out the villain's clever, master key that evades all traps, okay? Then give it to your players that they've figured that out. And now also give it to your players that if they can somehow put 2 and 2 together, that the villain can evade all traps, you've effectively given them a substantial clue by saying somehow the Lich King gets in and out of that dungeon.
Every time. Without a scratch. And I mean, like, there's certain things that you can do to enable these things, okay? So, for example, your players are walking in. They're like, okay, sword's in the far back regions. We're just going to walk in. We're going to go retrieve the sword, right? They step on something which enables the alarm systems, which kill all things. Now, you should have a device that is in place to shut down said systems. It might be a special key that needs to be used from the outside, which they can't get to because the large stone door came down. Okay? So, knowing that, one, there has to be a secondary entrance or a way to evade the trap, having a way to enable and disable all these traps, it is simple enough to say that the person with the combination, key, code, whatever, simply isn't around anymore. Now, that's the great thing about dungeons is they can be hundreds of years old. You know what I mean? They could be created by, 2 cavemen putting rocks together.
Could have been created by a bunch of crazy dwarves who hid the Sword of Turmeric, in there, expecting, the destined warriors to come get it at some point, but they all died off.
Yeah. The Destined Warriors weren't the Destined Warriors.
They never came, and they never needed the Sword of Turmeric.
Are these booby traps tests? Are they tests to make sure that your people are destined? It's just you got to realize that the traps have to have purpose. It all comes down to purpose.
You could also do such a good side story with that, where, like, if you knew it was created by dwarves, your players could spend time to go find the blueprints of the dungeon.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of good stuff in there that can make it so your players are, one, better prepared for your dungeon, give your dungeon more life, and be like, oh, well, they made this crazy cave system and they put all these traps in there. Like, sure, we could go tackle it head on, or we could go do this other thing that just improves your story.
And suddenly your dungeon is larger on the outside, if you know what I mean. Like, there's a town now we can go to. Suddenly my story is bigger than just
get the Sword of Turmeric.
Get the Sword of Turmeric, go 15 feet left. Now you have pathway A and pathway B. Because that is, I'm sorry, it's lame. It's lame. It's totally lame. You've the minute that, like, I know this, now I do want to get on to the next part, besides traps, which is creatures. Creatures are famously always in dungeons, right? Aaron's harpies. Here's my question. What is the fucking ecosystem of this dungeon that can supply 15 harpies for X amount of time? Are the harpies eating freaking grubs? And then, like, big old humans. Why are the harpies staying there if there is no prey? Animals and monsters, you got to get into the mindset of these of a creature or an animal. Why is it there in the location? Is it trapped there and has been eating grubs for 500 years? Can the harpies not get out?
Who trapped all these harpies?
Who trapped all these harpies? Now, I don't know D&D harpies. Are D&D harpies intelligent at all?
They're actually a pretty low-level monster. I don't know too much about them on that.
Research. We need to research our harpies a little bit better. But let's say
they're intelligent harpies.
Let's say they're intelligent harpies, which would be kind of cool because when we come into this dungeon area, these harpies are craved and starving, and they've been trapped down here for a long time. They're really looking for a way out. What a situation is that? We walked in, the harpies are like, whoa, not trying to fuck you up, guys.
How'd you get down here?
How'd you get down here? Is there a way up?
Can we communicate?
We'll give you. We'll tell you the area of the cave that we've mapped. We'll give you X to give us Y.
Harpies might not be the right monster for this, but it's some intelligent monster.
There are some intelligent monsters. Now, there are some monsters that I know that pop up in dungeons all the time, like gelatinous oozes.
Yep.
Okay, gelatinous oozes is a predatory monster, correct? Unless this thing doesn't have to eat once every 5,000 years.
I don't think it has to.
But why is it there? Who put it there? Were they just like, all right, so I'm going to go down to the slave auction. Going to buy me 5 gelatinous oozes from the local...
We had that acid rain that came down and mixed with the...
I mean, give me a reason that there are creatures here. And this is, as I said, this is improving your dungeon. Because your dungeon becomes more realistic at this point. You're not just throwing monsters in there and saying it's a challenge class of 5. You're saying there's 75 harpies that have been trapped down here for 5 years and have literally gone to cannibalizing each other to survive. They literally eat their own babies. I mean, dark. That's a little twisted and dark, but it works. We've got a gelatinous ooze that was quite literally purchased at a slave market. I've expanded my world. Now we've got a slave market somewhere in this world that quite literally sells monsters to people who want to build dungeons. So, what you in the market for today? I'm in the market for some gelatinous oozes. Why? I'm building a dungeon. Huh. Destined heroes you need to test out? Nah. Just don't want anyone getting near my fucking gold. Sounds weird, doesn't it? That's why you need to have a little bit better than, I don't want anyone getting to my gold. How are you intending to get your gold? These gelatinous oozes will eat the shit out of you, too. Ooh, didn't think about that. Well, I guess I'm going to have to build a little hatch towards the front of the dungeon. And that way I can just avoid all my oozes. So, creatures, you got to understand the ecosystem. When you start looking at your dungeon as a full spectrum dungeon, right? It was built here for this purpose. It was built by this. It was built for this goal. These creatures inhabit it for this reason. These traps were laid for this reason. One of my personal favorites that I read online was someone created traps not to get people, so they had built this dungeon not to keep people from getting in, but to keep the monsters from getting out. I thought it was ingenious. I was like, oh, that makes sense. They built all these freaking traps because, like, all these monsters were in this dungeon. Now, I was sitting there, I was like, why do you have monsters in this dungeon? But, I mean, at least they're on the path. This is why the traps are here. To keep the monsters from getting out. It's the first step on that path. And that should really be celebrated. When you're just trying to make your dungeons a little bit better, start off with a purpose, start off with a goal. Then maybe go into why the traps are there, why the animals are there, why certain people know about this dungeon, why certain people don't, why certain magics are in play, who made those magics, who cast the spell that all undead or anybody who dies within these walls become an undead fucking soldier. Who cast that spell? Was there a 50% special? Did the guy negotiate? You don't have to go that deep, but you know what I mean. When you start adding purpose and design and history to a dungeon, it's funny, by creating the past of a dungeon, you really make it alive in the future. It becomes something, not just brick stairs, 15 feet, A and B.
That's so well put.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else to add to this?
No, I think I properly vented about fucking harpies sitting in a cave with nothing to eat. Well, we got our dark and twisted harpies that were eating their own babies.
Again, steal it if you like that storyline.
Just saying, like, those harpies are the ones that I'd be fucking scared about. Like, one looks at you and its own, like, freaking, like, chickling is hanging out of its mouth.
Yeah.
This dungeon just got scary. If you tell me there's a bunch of, like, there's level 5, you guys enter, there's some harpies, they attack you, I am not scared. When you tell me one looks at me, turns its head fully around with its baby hanging out of its mouth, creepy. This shit nightmares are made out of.
Well, anyways, if you have some thoughts on improving your dungeons, or if you like some of the things we talked about, want to contribute to the conversation, or even have your own topic that you want to discuss or hear our musings about, go ahead and contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on the episode at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. You can find us on all major podcast sites. Please go ahead and share this podcast with your friends, other game members, people who want to become GMs themselves, part of your group, or just anybody who likes the hobby. Subscribe, review the podcast, please. And we're on YouTube as well. So
travel down to the dungeon and steal that like button and then smash it.
Nice. But anyways, that's going to wrap us up for this week. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.